Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for those who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of your life. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Well, today we have an opportunity to learn from a truly self-made man and an exponential entrepreneur, Naveen Jain. Back in 1959, Naveen was born to one of the poorest families in India, and yet he managed to make his way to college and eventually secure an engineering degree. By 1989, he'd found his way to the U.S. and a position at Microsoft. In 1996, he quit in order to start his very first company called InfoSpace, which basically provided content services such as phone directories, maps, and games that other websites could embed into their page for a small fee. Well, by April of 2000, InfoSpace was valued at $31 billion, and Naveen's net worth was an estimated $8 billion. And yet, just 30 days later, in May of 2000, when the dot-com bubble burst, InfoSpace's stock fell from $138 per share to just $1.56. In the years to follow, he would have to rebuild his life, rebuild his businesses, and he's started several companies since then, including one called Moon Express, with the intention of winning the Lunar X-Prize, which was announced 10 years ago. So the Lunar X-Prize is a contest that offers a $20 million cash prize, which has been sponsored by Google, to the very first privately funded team to land a robot on the moon that successfully travels more than 500 meters. Well, today, 10 years later, only 5 teams remain in the running, and Moon Express is one of them. Now, one of the most fascinating points of discussion in today's episode is Naveen's answer to why. Why is it important to make it to the moon? What resources can we find there that cannot be found on Earth? And what does a feasible business model look like that allows us to actually mine those resources and bring them back to Earth in a profitable manner? Next up, we dive into the progress that's been taking place in the biomed industry and why he recently started another company called the Viome in order to genetically map the trillions of microorganisms in your body. His answers and insights on this topic are absolutely fascinating. And if this is something that you are interested in as well, I know I am personally. I purchased the Viome kit the day I recorded this interview, and I'm really looking forward to participating in that company and getting those test results back here in the coming weeks. This is, without a doubt, one of the most fascinating and inspiring interviews we've had here on Self-Made Man. If you're a technology geek or a visionary entrepreneur who wants to change the world in a big way, you are in for an absolute treat. So please help me welcome Naveen Jain. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have an absolutely unbelievable guest with us today whose life and story I find incredibly inspiring. And with that being said, I would love to welcome Naveen Jain to the show. Naveen, thank you so much for the time today.
Well, Mike, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Absolutely. So as I briefly mentioned when we started our call today, I had a chance to see you speak and spend a couple of days with you and a bunch of our friends at the X-Prize Visioneer Summit about 6 months ago. And I just thought that was really neat that we both have a connection there with Peter and a passion around X-Prize. I was wondering if you could take a couple of minutes to share how you got involved with that organization.
Yes. Peter has been a good friend for a long time. And I think the thing I love about Peter is not only has this great mindset, he brings together the group of people that really are, to a large extent, focused on solving the humanity's great challenges. I am on the board of X-Prize, and also with Peter, he and I also share the board of Singularity University, where we are looking at how exponential technologies are essentially going to become the tools for individuals to be able to do things that could only be done by the large companies, or for that matter, even the superpowers.
And how did you take an interest in space? Because, you know, going and reading your bio and around your story, this is an interest and a passion that you've had since you were very young. But tell us a little bit about your story and help people get a context for how you became passionate about that.
Well, so, I hate to say that. Actually, my passion really is not space or the things I do. My passion is really how do we take some of the greatest challenges facing humanity and use the entrepreneurial and the innovation to solve those problems. And to me, the space was one of that thing that if you think about it, we all as humans are living in a single spacecraft, and we lovingly call this spacecraft planet Earth. And if it's flying around in the space, and if anything would happen to our spacecraft, we have a single point of failure. So whether it gets hit by a large asteroid, we all will become dinosaurs. And if you ask any dinosaur rolling in their graves, there'll be one thing they're always saying: if they had one entrepreneurial dinosaur, then they would still be roaming on the moon, Mars, and Europa, and Titan, and beyond. So why not create something today while we still have a chance to make the humanity a multiplanetary society? And there is no doubt in my mind that is possible today for us to live away from planet Earth. And to me, the moon really was a first step in that direction, because it's to some extent is our eighth continent, it's our sisterly planet, and the problems of living on the moon are very similar to the problems living on the Mars and beyond. And I would rather be a lunatic 3 days away than be a Martian 6 months away while we're still trying to solve all the bugs.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been the founder of several very successful companies. You've done very well for yourself from a financial and a business perspective. And as an entrepreneur myself, with large aspirations to have a positive impact on the planet while I can, and for our audience as well, who are all entrepreneurs, I would find it incredibly valuable if you could share some of your ways of thinking, if you will, about business and about building wealth that could provide us with some epiphanies. Because I found that individuals like yourself, individuals like Richard Branson, look at business differently. And how you look at it has obviously worked out very, very well.
So one of the things is that, most people have two fundamental myths about creating a business. Number one is they believe that they have to be good or expert at something they're trying to do. And to me, that's a foundational flaw in their argument. Because once you are good or expert in any field, the best you can do is to improve that thing by 10% or 15%. If you want to change something 10 times or 100 times, then you fundamentally have to challenge the foundation of everything that experts have taken it for granted. And that can only happen when you come from outside the field as a non-expert. So that's one myth. And the second thing is people believe that grandiose ideas and the big challenges can only be solved by people who have tremendous amount of financial resources. What people don't realize is the bigger the problem, the easier it is to actually attract the team and resources, the financial resources to solve that. And I can give you a couple of great examples around it. One is that I recently started a healthcare company with a simple goal. What if we can create a world where illness is optional? What if there was a world where no chronic disease ever happens? And when you set an audacious goal and saying, why do we people have to suffer from any chronic disease? And when I say chronic disease, I really mean everything from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, depression, obesity, diabetes, anxiety, gut issues, and cancer for that matter. So almost every one of these chronic diseases have the same root cause, which is the chronic inflammation. And all of that chronic inflammation, today we treat them pharmaceutically as a specific disease. And the whole fundamental belief is every disease has a pharmaceutical drugs that can be applied to it. And that was a foundation of the whole medical system that we have been living for the last 150, 200 years. And coming in from outside the medical world, to me, that just felt like a completely bizarre way of looking at humans, because not only we are unique, and not from our DNA perspective, because two human beings have 99.5% same DNA. What is really interesting is the whole medical field has completely ignored the idea of the human beings being an ecosystem. That means less than 1% of the genes that are expressed in our body come from our DNA. So our DNA only produces about 19,000 genes. And if you look at the ecosystem in our gut, the microorganisms in our gut, there are trillions of them, just like the space, there are trillions of stars. These organisms produce somewhere between 5 million to 10 million genes. So we are really not human. We are mostly microbial and have a little bit of human DNA sprinkled into it. And that belief system completely challenging the foundation of the medical system is what allowed me to create a company that says it is now possible to individually understand each person, what's happening microbially in their body and what's happening biochemically in their body. And the exponential technology is now available to be able to see at a molecular level what's happening. And then if you can apply the artificial intelligence on top of that, we can create a system that will be completely reimagines the health. And Mike, here's what I was going to say was, coming back to when I started that, I'm not a scientist. I don't have any degree in medicine. When I sat out and said, that is a problem I'm going to go out and attack next, the amazing things happen. Some of the best and the brightest talent in the world started calling me and say, that is a problem worth solving. So first call I got was the head of the IBM Watson research. The guy says, I've been working for 20 years using AI. This is a problem that's worth solving. And instead of working for $1 million a year, I'd rather work for little salary and solve this problem because that's going to be my legacy.
You know, I completely agree with you. And one thing is very apparent to me is that the government and the medical industries are, for some odd reason, hell-bent on always addressing the symptom instead of the actual cause, right? And so what you're talking about is going after the actual cause. And, you know, I want to geek out with you a little bit on the topic of, you know, the microbiome and probiotics and prebiotics and things like that.
Yes.
I've read lots of studies. I take probiotics myself. I've read lots of studies on how they can obviously affect your metabolism, even affect your mood. You're happy, you're sad, you're depressed, whatever it may be. So the obvious question at that point is, okay, how do I make sure I'm taking the right strains of probiotics? Because there's dozens and dozens at this point. And there's not really any readily available information on that. Hey, this strain tends to do this strain does that. And so for me, I haven't been able to make a really educated decision or choice on the type of probiotic products that I take. And I wonder if you had any insight on that.
Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, I do. So, Mike, that company that I started called Wyome, V as in Victor, IOME, basically this technology came from Los Alamos National Lab. So what they have done was they wanted to understand from a national security perspective, if there was a bad actor somewhere got hold of something biological, how would we know what suddenly happened? So they needed to figure out very quickly what is going on inside the human body, what organisms are there, how active they are, but more importantly, exactly what they are doing. So they spend hundreds of millions of dollars and 10 years actually trying to understand what these organisms are actually doing in your body. We got the exclusive license to the technology to start this company. And the beauty of the thing is now for the first time, as opposed to doing the microbiome test, the most of the companies in the last 5 years have been doing, and to large extent, the technology that they are using is a complete waste of money. So when you do a microbiome test today from companies like uBiome or American Gut Project, basically you're wasting your money because what they do is they use a technology called 16S sequencing. And what 16S does is it is a fraction of a gene only on bacteria. And it can only tell you about 50 to 70% of bacteria what genus they belong to. So it has no idea what species they are. It has no idea what strain they are. And only some portion of bacteria at a genus level. At a genus level, just to geek out a bit here, Mike, at a genus level, we all are mammals. We could be man, we could be dogs, and we could be rats. And if you ask any women, they will tell you, men are dogs anyway, so what difference does it really make? Right? But, you know, I would always remind them, yeah, sure, some men may be dogs, but not all men are dogs. And there is really a difference between a dog and a man. But really, what this technology that we have at Wyome does is it's able to look at every strain of every bacteria. And by the way, every virus. So whether it's a DNA virus, RNA virus, or bacterial phages, and these phages are the viruses that only impact bacteria and not humans. And then we look at all the yeast, fungus, mold, and including the human RNA. But more importantly, since we are looking at the RNA of everything, the transcriptome analysis, not the DNA metagenomics, we're doing the metatranscriptomics. That means we know not only what these organisms are, we know how active they are because they're replicating, but most importantly, we look at the functional side. We know what functions they are performing. So we know, are they producing short chain fatty acids? Are they producing the vitamins that we need? Are they producing TAM? Are they producing TCA? And really looking at every single functional part of that. And then we look at the host side, which is us, and seeing how does the food that we eat how does the body digest fat, the protein or carbohydrate. And then we are adding something called blood transcriptome. And this is going to come as a surprise to you as a geek here. Last week, there was a research published by Stanford University that says that blood has a full microbiome that has never been explored, and 99.9% of all the organisms are yet to be discovered. And so imagine if your blood has a complete microbiome, and when we do the transfusion of blood from one person to another person simply on a blood type, what you're really doing is giving the organism that may be very commensal in one person and giving it to someone where the immune system may actually not find them to be commensal, and essentially starts to get inflammation. And this low-grade inflammation is what causes many of these diseases. So coming back to what we do, we look at the blood transcriptome. That means we are now looking at all the mitochondrial gene expressions. We are looking at all the blood genes expression. And then we are also looking at all the organisms that are present in the blood. And all of that, we apply the AI on top of that. And by doing that, we are able to very specifically tell you what food are good for you and what foods you need to avoid, what are the right prebiotics, and what exactly the cocktail of probiotics that you need. An interesting thing is in the marketplace today, they have 10 or 15 types of strains, but that's it for everyone. And what we're doing is getting another technology coming out from another national lab, actually coming from Los Alamos National Lab, where they have come up with a mechanism where they are able to either reduce certain set of organism or increase the activity of certain organism by actually pre-calculating what cocktail of organism we need to take that will become symbiotic with what's already there and become antagonistic to something that we want to reduce or symbiotic that we want to increase. And now imagine if you can have a personalized set of these probiotics that will change every single month in terms of based on how your body is adapting to the food and how your body, the microbial ecosystem in your gut is changing. But the thing that you really, I was going to also point out, Mike, that might be really interesting for audience to go back to your original questions about the learnings is, another thing that I find is a lot of the entrepreneurs, when they start a company, they focus on the wrong things. They focus on making money. And that to me really is a fundamentally why people tend to fail. When you start something with a goal of making money, you end up actually never doing it. So in my personal opinion, making money is really like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you'll never get it. You just have to enjoy the process and you get to the end goal, but you never focus on it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I found that to be true in my experience as well. And, one of the things that you hinted at a few minutes ago was, not having to worry about your expertise in a specific area, but focus on finding, experts are to join your team. And that's along the lines of what I've learned from Richard Branson as well, is he's essentially, it's all about the people, it's all about the team. And that's how you can build, your empire and bring your dreams to life. So what kind of wisdom can you share with us when it comes to recruiting a world-class team who can help bring your vision?
So that's actually what I was trying to say was, first thing is you have to have a purpose that really appeals to the great people. Great people don't join you because you tell them that you're going to make a lot of money. Great people join you because you are solving a problem that people care about. So continuing on the theme of why, once I got the AI person, I got a call from Dr. Helen Messier. She is a PhD in microbiology. She is an MD, and she was working for Craig Venter for working on human longevity. And when she heard that I want to solve the problem of eliminating chronic diseases, she quit her job and joined me. Dr. Momo Yusevich, who was working at the national lab solving this problem for the last 10 years, he quit his cushy job to come join us. So what really happens is you start to attract the talent because you have an amazing purpose. It's no longer about you. It's no longer focused on making money. It's focused on a purpose that they believe is going to become their legacy. So I always, when I start a company, I always tell people, we are in it together to solve a problem. That everyone in their life had a chance to watch the history being made. Very few times in our life, we get a chance to be part of making history. Now is the time for us to go out and do these amazing things and create history together. We are living in this most amazing time in the human history. The next 10 years or 15 years are going to fundamentally change the trajectory of how humanity lives. And it's going to change everything that we do. We are living in these amazing times. And this has never been possible where half of the Fortune 500 companies are actually going to go out of business. And what that really means is you as an entrepreneur have a chance to become the next Fortune 500 companies because the king is dying. When the king is dying, everybody had a fair chance to become the next king. And the other thing that scares people really as an entrepreneur is, oh, someone is already doing that and they are 3, 4, 5 years ahead of me. And that to me actually is really interesting. With exponential technologies, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's going to become obsolete every 5 to 7 years. So if somebody is 5 years ahead of you, all that means is they're 2 years from being disrupted. That means all that's going to happen is now you have a chance to actually disrupt them. And it has never actually happened in any time in the human history where the companies before they go public could actually be out of business. So Uber disrupted many, many industries. And I wouldn't be surprised if Uber actually may not be around by the time they have a chance to go public because they will be disrupted themselves. And here is why. The biggest advantage Uber created was they created a network of all the drivers around the world. And by having a network of drivers, they are able to attract the consumers who want access to these drivers. It very shortly in the next 2 to 3 years, when you start to have the self-driving cars, the manufacturer of the car becomes the driver. So Tesla already has a network of drivers because they have self-driving cars and people already have a Tesla app. That means they can instantly become Uber. And if Tesla and GM and Chrysler were to come together, they will have a largest network of drivers, which really is the self-driving cars. And they will be 10 times larger than Uber would ever be able to create. And so imagine a single technology, how it disrupts the company that became a market leader by disrupting the existing industry.
You know, one of the biggest challenges young entrepreneurs have is transitioning from, you know, an operator working in the business and they're the one person, maybe they bring on another individual or two and they get the business up and running. Maybe they're making a couple $100,000 to $1 million a year. And to make that transition from operator to owner, where they get to focus, you know, working on the business, building a team, working on the vision. Have you had to go through that transition in any of your ventures?
So Mike, the answer is I have always found that coming from a point where I have no background in the industries I start. So I have started now 7 companies and no 2 companies have ever been in the same industry. So I always come from that humility that I really don't know what needs to be done. And that allows me to create a team of people that complement me. So I always believe that when you're looking for a friend, you want to find someone who is just like you. When you're looking for a teammate, you want to find people who are unlike you. That means they are not exactly the same thought process. They don't have the same skill set. And we all complement each other and you develop a respect for each other's role in the company. And to a large extent, the fact you don't know a lot of the industry knowledge allows you to delegate that work to other people. And that's how you create an amazing group of people who want to be taking control of what they are doing. But at the same time, you being a CEO entrepreneur, your job is to challenge everything that experts are saying. Why? Why can't it be done this way? Why do you have to do it this? Why can't we do this? And every expert initially starts with saying that will never work. Or I did that 10 years ago, that did not work. And I always remind them, 10 years, the world had changed. Why can't we try now and see if it still does not work?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I love about Peter is he has an unbelievably abundant view of the world. And obviously his big passion is educating people on the exponential number of changes that are taking place around the world in every single industry, how fast things are speeding up. And he has this really optimistic view of the world in that regard. And I try to look at both sides, and I see a lot of challenges, maybe like Elon Musk does around AI, right? That can come with that level of innovation as well. Is that something that you think about, or do you share Peter's really unbridled optimism when it comes to the future?
Well, to some extent, I look as an entrepreneur, look at the world very differently. So I don't look at the glass being half empty or half full. I focus on saying, do I want to fill the glass or not? Because if I want to fill the glass, do I really care it's half empty or half full? And if I don't want to fill the glass, do I really care it's half empty or half full? That means I look at the world not what it is, but what I want the world to be. As a parent and as a leader, as an entrepreneur, I never focus on taking someone to the water and making them drink. I focus on making them thirsty. So when you look at our children, we never ever tell them this is the right answer. We make them intellectually curious. We make them thirsty so they will find the water rest of their life and they will drink it. So our job really is to people who are around you is to make them intellectually curious, and their curiosity is the thirst that they will try to quench for the rest of their life.
I have a 7-year-old son, and that's a trait that I am trying to give him as well. Do you have any tips or suggestions on how you actually create that kind of curiosity within others?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 3 children. Our oldest is 26 years old. And when he was 17-year-old, he started something called Kairos Society, which is now world's largest college entrepreneurship. And, then when he graduated from Wharton, he started a company called Human, and that got acquired. And now he's starting a second company. Our daughter graduated from Stanford last year, and she's a Stanford STEM Fellow, Stanford Mayfield Fellow, Board of Stanford Women in Business, and the United Nations Ambassador for Women Empowerment. And she is now in a startup on the neuroscience side, empowering women and removing the bias of recruiting women. And our youngest one is a junior at Stanford, and he did his first TED Talk on how young entrepreneurs are the leaders of today, not going to become the leaders of tomorrow, because how young people are able to do things that could only be done, as I said, by the large companies and the superpowers. And the thing that we have done is really from day one is to start to tell every time they have a question, rather than giving them an answer, I always say, what do you think the answer might be? And why do you think that's the right answer? Why can't there be more than one right answer? Because I want them to start thinking about the different perspective that people may have. And always challenging, it doesn't matter what is it you're reading. You start to use and saying, what if that is wrong? What might be the right answer? And by allowing them to be constantly intellectually curious and always learning about every subject. So just like every one of our kids, I send them to Singularity University. I want them to know what is happening in the nanotechnology, what's happening in neuroscience, what's happening in artificial intelligence, what's happening in genetics and the epigenetics and synthetic biology, because no problem can be a unidisciplinary problem anymore. That means you have to apply the interdisciplinary approach, and learning to solve the problem becomes a skill that education system has to start teaching rather than the skills, because the skills are going to be available to anyone at their fingertips on this supercomputer called iPhone.
Right, absolutely. What is your biggest strength personally that you've had throughout business and in life?
I think the biggest strength is to be able to surround myself with the smartest people. So I'm always attracted by the people who are challenging the foundation of how things are, and always looking at these rose-colored glasses of what the world can be. So whether it is Peter Diamandis or Richard Branson or Elon Musk or even Jeff Bezos, always challenging what things are and always believing the world can be different and being part of the solution rather than constantly complaining about why the world is like that. So the human beings complain, the visionaries come up with a solution, and entrepreneurs implement. And entrepreneurs are the executor of the problem solving.
Yeah, I love that. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome throughout your life?
The biggest challenges really are what not to do. So most companies die from indigestion rather than starvation. That means as an entrepreneur, you see the opportunity everywhere you look. And sometimes learning to say no is just as big a skill, just learning to say yes. And it's really interesting that, when you spend a lot of time with Richard Branson, he'll tell you, I'm a yes man. I never say no to anything. I always say yes. It's my people who say no to everything. I always say yes. That means I'm always open to, sure, why not? And my people say, no, Richard, we can't do that.
Right, exactly. You've had some ups and downs throughout your business career. Had a very successful company that went through the dot-com bubble and had some challenges. How did that affect you mentally when you're at the top of your game, all of a sudden you're not anymore? What are you saying to yourself to keep moving forward, to stay positive, and to really not give up?
Honestly, Mike, that is, the ups and downs are only becomes ups and downs when you start to take them personally. So in a sense that I believe a life of an entrepreneur is really like the heartbeat. It goes up and down. If things are smooth, you're already dead. So that, as an entrepreneur, things are going to get good and things are going to get bad. You're going to go through the peaks and valleys. And to me, that is the heartbeat is your life of an entrepreneur. And to a large extent, anytime you're successful, a lot of people write a lot of negative things about you. And you can never take them personally. I mean, when I was running InfoSpace, people would write about the most negative thing just because there is a dot-com bust and a lot of companies' stock went down. But the fact is, the company is still worth over $1 billion. It sure is not worth 40, just like no other company in the dot-com era really did not have suffered, whether it's a Yahoo or you pick a name you want. They all went through the same problems. So to me, you can't take what people tell you when things are going up, that you are a genius, and when the stock goes down, you are a moron. And the fact is, neither when stock goes up, you're not a genius. When stock goes down, you're not a moron. You're just doing the best you can. And you cannot control what people say to you. You control how you react.
Absolutely.
Having that foundation in yourself that you will never do anything wrong. It doesn't matter what people say about you. All you can say is, I wish someday they will get to know me better. That means having that spiritual foundation is what really gets me moving. So when people were saying lots of negative things about me, to me, it gave me that fundamental spiritual thing that I never actually could have had, but for that experience that I went through, where I start to believe that, I have to really look inside my soul and to be able to live with myself what I am doing. And we can't have someone else be telling us who you are. As long as you are comfortable in your own skin and able to have high self-esteem and absolutely live your life with highest integrity possible, you can't worry about what anyone else says.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most valuable and also most difficult lessons one can learn in life. I can appreciate that very much. Well, 10 years ago, to change gears here just a little bit, the Google Lunar X-Prize was announced back in 2007, and X-Prize put up a $30 million prize for the first privately held company to land a robot on the moon that traveled more than 500 meters. And this is a venture that you started Moon Express around, obviously with the goal of winning that prize as well. Y'all have been competing for 10 years. You continue to make progress. Could you tell us a little bit about Moon Express and what got you into that?
So think about, as I was saying earlier about saving the humanity from potential extinction. And the idea is, why can't we become a multiplanetary society? And when 10 years ago, it was obvious that space travel is going to be happening. At the first time when we landed on the moon, the cost to us was about $25 billion. And in today's dollars, there'll be give or take $100 billion. 10 years ago, most people believe it could be now done with a cheaper exponential technology. It could be done for about $1 billion. I realized, being at Singularity University, the prices are coming down and the performance is coming, is going up. And to large extent, the things are becoming smaller. And when things become smaller in the space, they become less expensive. So we believe the cost could be down to $100 million. Now, we are within 6 months of launching a mission to the moon. And Mike, what surprised me is that I was so wrong. I was wrong tenfold. Our cost is going to be under $10 million. So our mission to the moon, our first mission to the moon on a marginal cost basis is going to cost us about $7 million. So think about that for a second. Is $7 million including the cost of the rocket? Elon did a wonderful job of reducing the cost of the rockets from several $100 million to $70 million. And now he's being disrupted by companies that are 3D printing the rockets. And those costs at the retail price, you can go to a website like Rocket Lab that we are using, and you can order a rocket for yourself for under $5 million.
Wow.
So now you can go to a website and order a rocket, and we order.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you're actually diving into one of the biggest questions I had for you around this, which a part of Moon Express's business plan is to actually mine, the moon for resources. And I wanted to know if you could describe the business model around that, right? Because even with the reduced cost, you're still looking at millions of dollars to go to the moon, mine rocks or resources and bring them back. Walk us through the vision around that and how that actually works financially.
Yeah, so I think the vision is really, really simple. We are going to become a multiplanetary society. So our job is not as much to, mine for the resources, is to more than that is to really use the resources on the moon or the resources on the Mars to be able to use them and live them right there. So how do we create a long-term sustainable colonies on different planets? In the beginning, you want to be able to bootstrap a company. So our thought is there is a tremendous amount of resources on the moon. Many people estimate there are about $16 quadrillion worth of minerals on the moon, and these are helium-3. And helium-3 is an isotope of helium that could be used for clean energy resource for fusion energy. And that means a small quantity of helium-3 could power our planet Earth for generations to come. We also have platinum-grade material on the moon, the rare earth elements. But the most important thing that's on the moon really is the water, because water is the oil of the space system. The ingredients of water, hydrogen and oxygen, not only make a rocket fuel, they also make the fuel for humanity. So imagine now you can start to create fuel depots along the way, so you don't have to carry all the fuel from planet Earth when you're going to the Mars or deep space. As many of you may know, 93% of the weight of the rocket is actually the rocket fuel. That means to carry every drop of fuel, you have to carry another drop just to carry that drop. And that is the reason you want to keep the lightest possible weight to get out of the gravity well. And then you fuel yourself on the way in the low Earth orbit, in the geosync orbit, in the lunar orbit, so that you don't have to carry all of the weight from the planet Earth. In the short term, Mike, one of the biggest things we can do is, as a novelty, even if you don't think about platinum grade material, and a lot of people say, hey, if you bring all of the platinum from the moon, don't you think the price of the platinum on the planet Earth is going to come down? And I keep reminding them, if I have so much platinum that can impact the worldwide prices of platinum, do you really think you need to be shedding tears for me?
Right. And so just to help explain the picture for people, when you talk about water being the fuel and water being found on the moon, there are large quantities of ice that have been found on the moon. And I'm assuming you're talking about some type of hydrogen fuel cell?
Well, no. So I'm talking about that. So right now we are using water. Our fuel for our lander actually is hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2. So you can create the hydrogen peroxide on the moon, and you can use the hydrogen rockets along with the oxygen as a catalyst. And that's the reason why you start to notice a lot of the people are now starting to build the rocket using the hydrogen fuel.
I see. And why would there be helium-3 on the moon but not on Earth?
Oh, very, very simple thing. The helium-3 comes primarily from the solar radiation, and the Earth is an amazing protection from the solar radiation because of its atmosphere. And the moon has absolutely no atmosphere. And that's why the solar radiation actually is in the regolith. You start to see a lot of the solar radiation in the form of helium-3.
What does this look like from a political standpoint, right? Essentially, how can we expand to other planets without turning this into a country against country fight, right, for resources, for property, for space.
And that is the mic that you started the conversation this about. The reason we fight over things are because we believe these things are scarce. The mindset of scarcity is what allows us to put value to something. So if we believe the land is scarce, we fight over land. If we believe the water is scarce, we fight over water. If we believe the energy is scarce, we fight over energy. What if there is an abundance of water, abundance of land, and the abundance of energy? And people say it doesn't matter how much we have. We humans are greedy. We will always want more of whatever we have. And I remind them there is something on earth that actually is in abundance. It's called oxygen. And I've rarely seen anyone fight over it. You and I can sit in the same room with 100 other people and never have anyone say, move away, you're taking my oxygen, that's mine, right? So my point is, what if the land is the next oxygen that is democratized and it's demonetized, is free to everyone? What if the energy is the next oxygen? What if the fresh water is the next oxygen? And the reason I mention that is all of those three things are in abundance if you just look up. Just in our own galaxy, we are a tiny pale blue dot in our own galaxy. And there are billions and billions of galaxies just in our own universe. And imagine there could be billions of the universes in this multiverse. So where is the scarcity? So why would people fight over resources on Moon when they could find a tremendous amount of resources on any asteroid, on Mars, on Europa, Titan, or pick a place you want? You can each have hundreds of these galaxies for yourself.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to look at things. The example with the air is definitely a light bulb moment for me. Do you have any plans to take up a seat on any of Richard Branson's space flights when they start to take off here shortly?
Well, I'm actually one of the earlier ones. So yeah, me and my son both have a ticket to the Richard Branson. And as soon as the Jeff starts his flight, I'll be on the Jeff's flight too.
Awesome.
The other thing is that as an entrepreneur, I was going to just say one more thing on the Moon side is that, you start to think about, say, how do you bootstrap a process? Because these things take 10, 20, 30 years. And instead of getting the funding, how can you create a bootstrap business model? So our initial thinking is, what if we just brought the moon rocks? We could potentially disrupt the whole diamond industry just by bringing the moon rocks, because diamonds are neither rare on Earth, nor they were used to be a symbol of love and romance until De Beers in 1950s made them a symbol of love and romance. Moon has been a symbol of love and romance for longest time. So when we bring the moon rock, all we have to do is make the diamond a commodity that it is. And we simply create a new marketing that says, everyone gives someone a diamond. If you love her enough, you give her the moon. Don't promise her the moon, give her the moon. And the girl gets up and says, Mike, I'm not going to marry you from a diamond. I thought you loved me. If you loved me, you would have given me the moon.
That's great. That's a great, I love that tagline. That's awesome.
Right? And then secondly, the honeymoon really becomes about taking your honey to the moon, because if you take your honey to Hawaii, there'll be honey Hawaii, won't it be?
Right. That's great. I love it. Naveen, this has been an awesome conversation. I've loved the diversity of topics that we've gotten to venture down, and just to hear you and your expertise in so many different arenas and areas is just awesome. We've got a couple of minutes left here. Are there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with everybody listening today?
Yes. As an entrepreneur, there are two things that I really believe that I want people to know. One is, think so big that people think you are crazy. So when you tell someone what you're going to do, unless they say it's freaking crazy, you're not thinking big. So when I tell someone we are going to go mine the moon, they say that's a freaking crazy idea. You're onto something. When I tell someone, you know what, we're going to actually create a world where sickness is optional, people say that's a crazy idea. That means you're on to something. Second thing is, never be afraid to fail. You only fail when you give up. An idea that you start with may or may not work. And every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a bigger idea. Entrepreneurs never fail, they pivot. You only fail when you give up. So just don't give up.
Awesome. Absolutely agreed. Where can folks go to connect with you and follow your ventures?
Absolutely. You can send me an email at naveen.jain@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And I read all my emails and you can find me on any of my ventures, Viome.com. That's V in Victor, IOME.com, or moonexpress.com.
Awesome. I'm going to be ordering one of those Biomes that's here today as soon as we get off.
Because, thanks a lot, Mike. I think you really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I completely understand the science behind it. I believe in it, and I love what you guys are doing there. So thank you once again. This has been an absolute pleasure, Naveen. I appreciate it so much. Thank you all for listening once again. If you loved this show as much as I did, please share it with your friends. Help us spread the word about the mission here at Self-Made Man, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Set my heart afire. Suffocating, I'm waiting and always hesitating. Kryptonite desires set my heart afire.